Welcome back to Vic Property Law, where we'll be discussing the first part of a contract of sale and a vendor statement. But today, precisely the contract. This video will discuss what the contract actually is, the elements that make up the contract of sale, the special conditions, and the general conditions. Well, let's begin. In today's video, we'll be covering what a contract of sale for land is, the cooling off, particulars of sale, special conditions, and finally the general conditions. A contract of sale for land is the agreement part of the contract and vendor statement. It outlines all the agreements, conditions, and key dates for the conveyance or transfer of a property to the purchaser. When we say transfer of a property, that means at the day of settlement, when the actual property is transferred from the vendor to the new owner, the purchaser. We're sure you'll warm up to the idea of cooling off. Now, cooling off allows you to exit the contract if you change your mind. It's not a free way out though. To cool off, you need to pay either $100 or 0.2% of the purchase price, whichever is higher. This will then allow you to exit the contract. But keep in mind that if you go to an auction, you don't get access to cooling off, so you'll essentially be signing a contract that you're locked into. Now, cooling off is also not available to real estate agents that buy property as well. Finally, the most important aspect of cooling off is that it starts from the following business day that you, as the purchaser, sign the contract. 3 business days does not include weekends or public holidays. So if you sign on a Friday, you get Saturday and Sunday included, meaning you can still cool off until the following Wednesday. The particulars of sale outline the agreement between the purchaser and the vendor. You'll find it towards the start of the contract. It'll usually say in big bold heading, particulars of sale. What a surprise. Yay! This is where you'll find the purchase price, the deposit, the balance due to the vendor at settlement, whether the property is subject to lease, which we'll come back to, if GST is applicable, and it generally isn't with residential sales. And finally, if there will be subject to finance, building, or pest conditions. We will explain these particular conditions within the special conditions part of this same video. Now bear in mind, when you read balance due to the vendor, don't forget, this figure hasn't taken into account adjustments, which we'll discuss in detail in future videos. Now jumping back a square to subject to lease. If the particulars of sale say subject to lease, this means the property is currently tenanted or rented, and at settlement, the vendor doesn't have to give you an empty house to move into, what we call vacant possession. In relation to putting in special conditions, we always recommend that you speak to your lawyer and don't just take our word for it. That way you can get the proper legal advice you need before you're just putting a big amount of money down. The most common special conditions you want to be considering are subject to finance, subject to building and/or pest, and making land tax not adjustable. If there's an owner's corporation or body corporate as they're used interchangeably, it's always best to get more information about this particular area from your lawyer. Subject to finance grants you a specified time frame by which you need to let the vendor know whether your finance with a specific bank was approved or not. If yes, then this condition is satisfied. If not, then you need to provide the proof that it was rejected, and once proven, the contract comes to an end and your deposit is returned. To add this condition to a contract, you need to enter the following details. You need to enter the bank that you're going to go for, the amount of time or date by which you will inform the vendor, and finally, how much money you intend to apply for. Now be careful. The amount of money that you write down is the threshold amount. If you get rejected for a loan amount for even 1 cent more, the subject to finance condition is not valid anymore. If you need more time, make sure to let your lawyer know as soon as possible. You also get what's called a 2-day grace period. So if you miss the due date to let the vendor know, you've still got 2 more days to let them know whether it's been approved or rejected. We at VicPropLaw hate paying land tax, and we would always recommend that you should try to avoid paying any part of the vendor's land tax if you're buying the property. To do this, it's rather simple. You just tell the real estate agent, "I don't want to pay land tax," and add a special condition making land tax not adjustable, and that you, the purchaser, will not be liable to pay any part of the land tax at all. Pretty simple, eh? A vendor could be holding many properties and incurring a lot of land tax. We're all generous sometimes, but you don't want to pay any more tax than you need to. The general conditions of a contract are standard legislated conditions for every single contract in Victoria. They can be amended by way of special conditions, but generally remain unchanged. You should definitely have a look through these conditions. They'll give you a foundation of contract conditions in Victoria. It'll also provide you with the standardised details of subject to finance and subject to building and pest. Once again, you may be feeling more overwhelmed than when you watched our first video. And yes, we're confident you've watched that first video. Or maybe you're feeling like a property law guru. Either way, we hope you'll like, share and subscribe to VicPropLaw to get all the latest information about conveyancing and property law. If you have any questions, ask away in the comments section. As always, we'll see you next time.